Julian Croft lived in a world made of glass and gold. From his penthouse apartment, the city of Chicago spread out like a carpet of twinkling jewels. He had everything a man could dream of. He owned companies that touched every corner of the globe. His name was a whisper of power in boardrooms and a shout of envy in magazines. Yet, in the quiet moments when the sun would set over Lake Michigan, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, a deep loneliness would settle in his heart. It was a cold, heavy feeling that no amount of money could warm. The people in his life seemed to love his wealth, not him. They loved the parties, the yachts, and the access his name provided. Their smiles felt like masks, their laughter like echoes in an empty hall. He remembered a conversation with his grandfather, a man who had built the family empire from nothing but grit and a dream. "Julian," his grandfather had said, his voice raspy with age but firm with wisdom, "the greatest treasure you'll ever find isn't in a vault. It's in the heart of someone who sees you, truly sees you, and loves you for the person you are, not the things you have." Those words had haunted Julian for years. He yearned for that kind of connection, a love that was real and untainted by the gleam of his fortune. He wanted to be loved for his thoughts, his quiet humor, his flaws, and not for the number in his bank account. He was tired of the gilded cage, no matter how beautiful it was. The decision came to him one rainy Tuesday morning as he watched a cleaner meticulously polish the glass walls of his office. The man worked with a quiet dignity, lost in his task, unaware of the billions of dollars being discussed just feet away. An idea, wild and desperate, began to form in Julian's mind. What if he could shed his identity? What if he could become someone ordinary, someone invisible? He wanted to walk among people without the shield and the burden of his name. He wanted to see if anyone could care for Julian, the man, not Julian Croft, the magnate. It was a risky, almost foolish plan, but it was the only path he could see that might lead to the one thing he couldn't buy, true love. So with a resolve that had helped him conquer the business world, he set his plan in motion. He created a new identity. Jay, a man with a simple past trying to make a fresh start. He put his suits and expensive watches away, trading them for worn jeans and simple t-shirts. He rented a small, unassuming apartment in a neighborhood far from the gleaming towers he called home. He told his closest confidant, his elderly butler Alfred, that he would be gone for a while seeking something he had lost. Alfred, who had known Julian since he was a boy, simply nodded with a knowing, sad smile. He understood the emptiness that haunted the young billionaire. Julian was stepping out of his cage, hoping to find a world where he could finally be free. The first day as Jay, the cleaner, was a shock to Julian's system. He had never truly worked with his hands before. His life had been a series of meetings, phone calls, and decisions that moved millions of dollars with a single word. Now his world had shrunk to the size of a mop bucket and a supply closet that smelled of bleach and old rags. He reported to a large downtown office building, one he ironically owned through a subsidiary company, a fact known only to him. The supervisor, a stern man named Mr. Henderson, looked him up and down with a skeptical eye, handing him a uniform that was 2 sizes too big and a list of tasks that seemed endless. The fluorescent lights of the service corridors felt harsh and unforgiving compared to the soft, custom lighting of his penthouse. The physical labor was more demanding than he had ever imagined. His muscles, accustomed to a personal trainer and light exercise, screamed in protest after just a few hours of scrubbing floors and polishing brass fixtures. His hands, usually holding a sleek smartphone or a fine pen, quickly became raw and blistered from the harsh cleaning chemicals. He felt clumsy and inefficient, knocking over a wastebasket and struggling to operate the industrial floor buffer, which seemed to have a mind of its own. He saw the smirks and heard the quiet chuckles of the other cleaning staff, seasoned veterans who moved with an easy, practiced rhythm. He was an outsider, a novice in a world he knew nothing about. He learned humility in those first few days. No one cared that he could speak 3 languages or understand complex financial markets. Here, his worth was measured by how clean a window was, or how thoroughly a floor was mopped. He was no longer Julian Croft, the brilliant CEO. He was just Jay, the new guy who didn't know how to wring out a mop properly. He ate his lunch, a simple sandwich he'd made himself, in a cramped break room, listening to conversations about overdue bills, sick children, and the rising cost of groceries. It was a world of real, immediate struggles, so different from the abstract problems he was used to solving from his leather chair high above the city. The exhaustion he felt at the end of each day was profound, a bone-deep weariness he had never experienced. He would return to his small apartment, his body aching in places he didn't know could ache. He would collapse onto his lumpy mattress, too tired to even think. Yet, amidst the pain and the struggle, a strange sense of satisfaction began to grow. For the first time he felt he was earning his keep in a tangible way. He was not moving numbers on a screen, he was creating order and cleanliness. He was a small, unnoticed part of the city's vast machinery, and in that anonymity, he found a sliver of the peace he had been searching for. It was a hard-won peace, but it was real. It was during his second week, while he was struggling to clean a stubborn coffee stain from a carpet on the 27th floor, that he first met her. Her name was Clara. She worked late, an administrative assistant in a small law firm that rented one of the less prestigious office spaces. He had noticed her before, a quiet presence at her desk, always one of the last to leave. That evening, he heard a soft voice behind him. "Here, try this," she said. He turned to see her holding out a small bottle of cleaning solution. "My mom swears by a mix of vinegar and lemon for coffee stains. I keep some here for my own clumsy moments." Her smile was gentle and her eyes, a warm shade of brown, held no judgment, only a simple, open kindness. Clara was not like the women Julian was used to. There was no pretense about her, no carefully constructed facade. Her clothes were simple but neat, her hair was often tied back in a practical ponytail, and her face was free of heavy makeup. What struck him most was the genuine warmth she radiated. She treated him, the cleaner, with the same respect and courtesy she would have shown the CEO of the company. She saw a person struggling with a task and offered help without a second thought. Her values were woven into her every action: hard work, honesty, and a deep-seated kindness that seemed to be her guiding principle in life. She believed in the simple dignity of a job well done, no matter what that job was. She explained that she was working late to save up for her younger brother's college tuition. Her family wasn't wealthy, and she felt a strong sense of responsibility to help them. She spoke of her life not with complaint, but with a quiet determination that Julian found incredibly admirable. She found joy in simple things: a good book from the library, a walk in the park on a sunny day, or a phone call with her mother. Her world was small compared to his, yet it seemed so much richer, so much more meaningful. He found himself thinking about her long after he had clocked out, the memory of her gentle smile a beacon in the sterile, lonely landscape of his new life. He began to look forward to the evenings, hoping for a chance to see her. Sometimes she would offer him a cup of coffee she had brewed, or share a piece of chocolate from her desk drawer. These small gestures of kindness were more valuable to him than any grand, expensive gift he had ever received. They were genuine, offered without any expectation of something in return. He was just Jay, the quiet cleaner, and she was Clara, the kind woman who worked late. In her presence, he felt a sense of peace he hadn't known was possible. Her simple decency was a balm to his lonely soul, a reminder that goodness still existed in the world, far from the glittering towers of wealth and power. Their friendship blossomed in the quiet hours of the night, under the sterile glow of the office lights that mimicked a pale moonlight. Their conversation started small, simple exchanges about their day. Julian, as Jay, would talk about the challenges of his job, making light of his struggles with the floor polisher. Clara would share stories about her work, the funny quirks of her boss, or a particularly difficult legal document she had to type. These small talks slowly grew into something deeper. They found a comfortable rhythm, a safe space where they could be themselves without fear of judgment. He learned about her dream of one day opening a small bakery, a place filled with the smell of fresh bread and pastries, a dream she was slowly saving for. One evening they found themselves on the building's rooftop terrace, a space usually reserved for corporate events but deserted at that late hour. The city lights spread out below them, a breathtaking tapestry of brilliance. Clara leaned against the railing, a thoughtful expression on her face. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" she said softly. "Sometimes, when I feel overwhelmed, I come up here. It makes my problems feel small." Julian stood beside her, the cool night air a welcome relief. He had seen this view 1,000 times from his own penthouse, but seeing it with her, through her eyes, made it feel entirely new. He saw not a symbol of his power but a world full of stories, of people like Clara working and dreaming. He found himself opening up to her in ways he never had with anyone else. He spoke of a fictional past, of course, but the emotions he shared were real. He talked about feeling lost, about searching for a sense of purpose. He told her he felt like he was starting his life over, trying to figure out who he was meant to be. Clara listened with an empathy that was both profound and healing. She didn't offer easy answers or platitudes. Instead, she shared her own vulnerabilities, her own fears about the future, and her own simple philosophies for getting through the tough times. "We all get a little lost sometimes," she said, her voice a comforting whisper. "The important thing is to keep walking, one step at a time." Their bond was forged in these shared moments of honesty and vulnerability. It wasn't built on grand gestures or expensive dates. It was built on late-night coffee, shared laughter over silly mistakes, and deep conversations under a sky full of stars. He helped her move a heavy filing cabinet. She saved him the last donut from the break room. These were the small, simple bricks that built the foundation of their connection. For the first time, Julian felt seen. Clara saw past the cleaner's uniform, past the quiet demeanor, and saw the man underneath. And he, in turn, was falling deeply in love with the woman who showed him the beauty in a simple, honest life. Living as Jay, Julian began to see the world through a completely different lens. The things he once took for granted now seemed like extraordinary luxuries. A hot shower at the end of a long, grueling shift felt more rewarding than any spa treatment he had ever paid for. And, well, a simple home-cooked meal, something he hadn't prepared for himself in years, tasted more delicious than the most expensive dish at a five-star restaurant. He learned the value of $1 in a way he never had before. He would carefully count his wages, budgeting for rent, food, and transportation. The experience was humbling, stripping away the arrogance that had unknowingly clung to him like expensive cologne. Clara was his unwitting teacher in this new life. She showed him the joy that could be found in the simplest of pleasures. One Saturday, she invited him to a free concert in the park. They sat on a worn blanket, sharing a bag of popcorn and listening to a local band play with more passion than polish. Julian watched the joy on her face, the way she tapped her foot to the music, completely unconcerned with appearances. He realized he was genuinely happy, happier than he had been at any of the exclusive, star-studded events his old life had been filled with. This joy was pure, unbought, and shared with someone who cared for him for who he was. He learned about resilience from her. Clara faced her challenges with a quiet grace that astounded him. When her refrigerator broke down, she didn't panic. She calmly researched repair videos online, bought the necessary part, and spent an entire afternoon fixing it herself to save money. Julian, who would have simply had the appliance replaced with a single phone call, watched in awe. She taught him that problems were not just obstacles to be removed with money, but challenges to be met with ingenuity and determination. Her strength was not the loud, aggressive strength of a boardroom takeover, but a quiet, steady fortitude that was far more powerful. His personal growth was immense. The layers of cynicism and entitlement he had worn for years began to peel away, revealing a more compassionate and understanding man underneath. He started to notice the other members of the cleaning crew, not just as staff, but as people with their own lives, hopes, and struggles. He listened to their stories, offered a helping hand when he could, and earned their respect not with money, but with genuine camaraderie. He was becoming a better man, a man his grandfather would have been proud of, and all of it was because of Clara, the woman who saw worth in Jay, the cleaner, and in doing so, helped Julian find the truest version of himself. The moment Julian knew he had to reveal the truth came on a cool autumn evening. His feelings for Clara had grown from a gentle friendship into a deep, unwavering love. It was a love purer than any he had ever known, because it was for Jay, the man who had nothing to offer but his heart. The lie he was living had started as a means to an end, a tool to find honesty. But now it felt like a heavy wall between them. To continue hiding his identity felt like a betrayal of the very trust and honesty their entire relationship was built upon. He loved her too much to lie to her any longer. His heart was unmasked, even if his identity wasn't. He wrestled with the decision for days, the fear of her reaction a constant churning knot in his stomach. How could he explain his deception? Would she see it as a noble quest for truth, or a cruel game played at her expense? He imagined the scene over and over, picturing the hurt and confusion in her eyes. He feared that the man she had come to care for, Jay, would disappear, replaced by the intimidating figure of Julian Croft, the billionaire. The thought that he might lose her, the one person who made him feel whole, was almost too much to bear. But he knew that a future built on a lie was no future at all. She deserved the truth, no matter the consequences. He chose to tell her at a place that was special to them, a small, quiet pier overlooking the lake, where they had once spent hours talking as the sun went down. He asked her to meet him there after work, his voice tight with a nervousness she must have noticed. As he waited for her, the setting sun cast a golden glow across the water, the same kind of beautiful, lonely sunset he used to watch from his penthouse. But this time, he wasn't alone. He was waiting for the woman he loved, ready to risk everything for a chance at a real life with her. When she arrived, her smile was as warm as ever, though her eyes held a question. He took a deep breath, his heart pounding against his ribs. "Clara," he began, his voice trembling slightly. "There's something I have to tell you, something I should have told you a long time ago." He didn't start with the money or the companies. He started with the loneliness, the feeling of being in a gilded cage. He told her about his yearning for something real, for a connection that wasn't tied to his wealth. He told her about the desperate plan he had concocted to find it. He spoke of Jay not as a lie, but as the truest part of himself he had discovered, a part of him that had been awakened by her kindness and her spirit. He was unmasking his heart before he unmasked his name. As he spoke, he watched every flicker of emotion on Clara's face. He explained who he really was. He said his name, Julian Croft, and saw a brief flash of recognition in her eyes, as if she had heard it somewhere before, in a news headline or a magazine. He told her about the penthouse, the companies, the life of unimaginable privilege he had walked away from. Each word felt heavy, like he was placing a great weight between them. The simple, easy world of Jay and Clara seemed to be dissolving, replaced by something complicated and immense. The city lights across the lake, which had once seemed so romantic, now looked like a reminder of the chasm that separated their two worlds. He laid it all bare. He told her that the office building where they met was just one of many properties he owned. He confessed that his small, rented apartment was a world away from his true home. He explained that his entire life as a cleaner had been a carefully constructed facade. He saw the confusion in her eyes turn to shock, a quiet, stunned silence that was more unnerving than any angry outburst would have been. He braced himself for the accusation, for the anger, for the hurt. He had deceived her in the most fundamental way, and he knew he had no right to expect her forgiveness. He had played a part, and in doing so, had made her an unwitting actor in his personal drama. He quickly tried to explain his motives, his voice filled with a desperate sincerity. "It was never a game, Clara. I swear it wasn't," he pleaded, his gaze locked on hers. "I was just so lost. I wanted to know what it felt like to be liked for me, not for my money. You did that. You saw me. You were kind to me when I was just Jay, the guy who couldn't even clean a coffee stain properly. Everything we shared, every conversation, every laugh, that was all real. That was me. The most real version of me I have ever been." He felt tears welling in his eyes, the raw emotion of the past few months pouring out of him. He had found what he was looking for, but he was terrified he was about to lose it. The silence that followed felt like an eternity. The weight of his confession hung in the air, as vast and glittering as a sky full of 1,000,000,000 stars. He had shown her his universe, a universe of wealth and power she had never known existed, but in doing so, he risked shattering the small, perfect world they had built together. He had set out to find a love that wasn't about money, and now, his immense fortune was the single biggest obstacle standing between them. He had finished his story. He had revealed his truth. Now, all he could do was wait and hope that the woman he loved could see past the billionaire and still see the man she had come to know. Clara stood motionless for a long time, the cool lake breeze gently rustling her hair. She looked from Julian's earnest, tear-filled eyes to the distant, glittering skyline of the city, as if trying to connect the two realities. The man she knew as Jay, who worried about making rent and took pride in a well-mopped floor, was also the man who owned a significant portion of that skyline. It was a truth so immense, so unbelievable that it was difficult to process. A part of her felt a sting of betrayal. Her simple, honest life had been observed, studied, like an experiment. She had been a part of his quest without her knowledge or consent, but then she looked back at him, and she saw not a powerful billionaire, but the same man she had shared coffee with on late nights. She saw the same vulnerability in his eyes that she had seen when he spoke of feeling lost. She remembered his kindness, his quiet humor, and the genuine way he listened to her. She remembered the man who helped her move a heavy cabinet, and who looked at her with such open adoration. The feelings she had for him were for that man. They were real, and his wealth, as shocking as it was, couldn't erase the connection they had forged in the quiet hours of the night. Her heart, though reeling from the shock, recognized the truth of his emotions. Finally she spoke, her voice quiet but steady. "So, you're telling me," she began slowly, a faint incredulous smile touching her lips, "that you're not actually very good at cleaning carpets?" A small laugh escaped her, a release of the tension that had been building. It wasn't a laugh of mockery, but one of disbelief and a dawning understanding. Julian looked at her, stunned by her reaction. In that moment, he saw the depth of her character shine through. She wasn't blinded by the money, or angered by the lie. She was processing the heart of the matter, the core of the man standing before her. She saw his desperate search for authenticity and understood the loneliness that must have driven him to such extreme measures. "I need some time, Julian," she said, her voice becoming more serious. "This is a lot. I fell in love with Jay. I need to figure out if I can be with Julian Croft." Her honesty was a gift. She didn't give him a false immediate acceptance, nor did she reject him outright. She was being true to herself just as he had hoped. She acknowledged the reality of their situation but didn't let it destroy the foundation they had built. She saw the good man inside the lie, the man he had become through his journey. Her response was not about the money or the status, it was about trust and the future. And in her thoughtful, measured reaction, Julian found a flicker of hope. Julian gave her the space she needed, a decision that was perhaps the hardest of his entire life. He returned to his world, but he was a changed man. The glass walls of his penthouse no longer felt like a cage, but they did feel empty without her. He went back to running his empire, but with a new perspective. He saw his employees not as numbers on a spreadsheet, but as people, like the janitorial staff he had worked alongside. He implemented new policies for better wages and benefits for his lowest-paid workers, a decision that baffled his board but felt deeply right to him. He was integrating the lessons he learned as Jay into the life of Julian Croft. A week later, Clara called him. She asked him to meet her not at a fancy restaurant, but at the small park where they had listened to the free concert. When he arrived, he saw her sitting on their blanket, a small picnic basket beside her. His heart soared with a tentative hope. She looked up and smiled, a genuine, warm smile that reached her eyes. She told him she had done a lot of thinking. She was intimidated by his world, by the sheer scale of his wealth and influence. But she had realized that the man she loved was the one who was willing to give all of that up just to find something real. She loved the man who was humble, kind, and a little bit lost. "I want to be with you, Julian," she said, her voice clear and strong, "but we have to do it our way. I don't want the penthouses and the fancy parties. I want the walks in the park, the late-night talks, and the life we started to build. I still want to open my bakery." She looked him in the eye, her gaze unwavering. "And you have to promise me one thing, no more lies. We build our future on truth." Julian felt a profound sense of relief and joy wash over him, so powerful it almost brought him to his knees. He promised her with all his heart that their life would be built on nothing but honesty. Their future stretched before them, a beautiful blend of their two worlds. Julian knew he couldn't abandon his responsibilities, but he could change how he lived. They found a home together, a comfortable house with a garden, not a sterile penthouse. He invested in her dream, and soon, Clara's bakery opened its doors, a warm and welcoming place filled with the scent of lemons and love. Julian would often work from a small table in the corner, the billionaire CEO running his global empire from a laptop, surrounded by the simple joy he had searched for his entire life. They built a future not on his wealth but on the values they shared, kindness, honesty, and a love that had been proven to be more precious than gold.